My husband passed 10 years ago. Yesterday. A bank manager slid a manila envelope across her desk and whispered, "Mrs. Chen, there's a second account. Your daughter-in-law has been the only signer since 2015. I folded my hands in my lap and smiled. She had no idea I'd brought my lawyer. David Kwon stood up from the chair beside me and quietly slid his business card across the desk. The bank manager looked at it. Then she looked at me. Her expression changed from sympathy to something closer to alarm. "I wasn't expecting legal counsel at this meeting," she said. David didn't blink. He opened his leather portfolio and spread 6 months of subpoenaed transaction records across her desk. She stared at them for a long moment. Then she excused herself and picked up her desk phone. She was calling compliance. While we waited, I thought about what had happened 30 minutes earlier. David and I had been sitting in his car in the parking lot. He opened the manila envelope I'd received from the bank the day before and started circling numbers. 3 wire transfers, $112,000 total, all routed to an account I had never seen. "These aren't random," he said. "Someone built a pipeline out of your husband's estate. The transfers happen on the 1st of each month for 3 consecutive months, starting January 2015. That was exactly 4 months after Harold died. One of the routing numbers belonged to a commercial real estate LLC. I didn't say anything. I just watched David circle it in red ink. The compliance officer arrived. Her name was Sandra Hu. She was tall and serious and carried a second folder. She sat down across from us and asked me how long I'd known about the second account. "Mrs. Chen, we take fiduciary irregularities very seriously," she said. "But I need to understand what you already know." Then she placed a signature card on the desk. It showed that my daughter-in-law, Patricia Chen Yang, had been added as sole signer on March 3, 2015, using a power of attorney document, a document I never authorized. I looked at the notary stamp. It came from an office that was shut down under investigation in 2017. I felt my pulse in my wrists, but I kept my hands folded. I watched David photograph the signature card with his phone, and I thought about the tea I poured for my granddaughter Lily. 2 weeks ago, she had looked at me sweetly and said, "Grandma, you don't need to understand the finances." That sentence changed everything. I looked at Sandra and said quietly, "I understand more than anyone in this family realizes." In my handbag, wrapped in a silk handkerchief, was the original beneficiary form Harold signed in 2013. It named me as his sole heir. My son told me that form didn't exist, but it did. It was right there in my purse. Sandra opened her laptop and said there was a third account, one that no one had mentioned yet. David asked Sandra to freeze all accounts connected to the POA. She hesitated. She said she needed authorization from the branch director, who wouldn't be back until Monday. David reached into his portfolio and pulled out a pre-drafted emergency motion for probate court. It was already signed by me, dated that morning at 7:15 a.m. "Then we'll be filing this afternoon," he said. My phone buzzed. I looked down. A text from my son Richard. "Mom, why is the bank calling me?" "Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end. And let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I'm sitting at my kitchen table right now with a cup of jasmine tea. And I want to tell you something. What the bank revealed yesterday was only the beginning. The real story goes much deeper. If you're new here, press that like button and stay until the very end. I promise you won't see the final twist coming. People from across the country have been writing to me, sharing their own stories. I read a comment just yesterday from a woman in Sacramento who went through something so similar it made my hands shake. Tell me where you're listening from. I read every single comment, and your stories give me courage. I'm recording this from Portland, Oregon, where I've lived for 42 years. I tapped my fingernail on the table just now. Harold always noticed when I did that. He'd say, "Mei Ling, you only tap when you're thinking hard." He was right. I want to start from the very beginning. The morning Harold died. Because that's when the first lie was told. And I want you to understand something. This isn't a story about money. This is a story about being underestimated. They looked at me and saw an old woman who couldn't possibly fight back. That was their biggest mistake. My own son, my only child, was the one who signed the document that started everything. My name is Mei Ling Chen. I'm 74 years old. I spent 31 years as a bookkeeper for Portland Public Schools. I balanced six-figure budgets before my son learned to count. Even now, I keep a calculator and a red ledger on my kitchen counter. Old habits. After Harold died, Richard told me I shouldn't worry about numbers anymore. I smiled and nodded. But I never stopped worrying about numbers. Numbers were my whole life. Every morning I wake up at 5:30. I walk 2 miles along the Willamette River. I come home and make breakfast. Then I go out to Harold's garden. He planted chrysanthemums and peonies the year we got married. 1978. I've never let them die. I water them with a copper watering can he bought at an estate sale in 1992. The handle is worn smooth from his hands and mine. Richard used to visit the garden with me after Harold's funeral. Then he stopped. About 6 months later, he stopped visiting altogether. I trusted my family completely. Richard was Harold's pride. The first Chen to earn a business degree. His wife Patricia came from a respected family, and my granddaughter Lily was the joy of my retirement. I gave them keys to my house. I gave them access to my safe deposit box at Columbia Pacific Bank. That box held Harold's will, the original beneficiary forms, our marriage certificate, and $8,000 in emergency cash. I gave them everything because that's what family does. When I visited the safe deposit box in early 2024, the will and the cash were gone. In February 2024, a bank statement arrived in the mail. It was addressed to Harold, 10 years after his death. It showed an active checking account with a balance of $3,217. Dead men don't keep checking accounts, and someone was spending from his. The statement showed recurring payments to a company called Jade River LLC. I sat at my kitchen table that night and searched the name online. Patricia was listed as the registered agent. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the laptop and poured myself more tea. The next morning, I took the statement to my neighbor, George Tanaka. George is a retired postal worker. He's lived next door for 20 years. He looked at the statement and shook his head. Mei Ling, this isn't an error. Someone's using your husband's name. George helped me file a request for a full account history through the FDIC's consumer complaint process. 3 weeks later, the history arrived. It was 19 pages long. I invited Richard and Patricia to Sunday dinner in March. I cooked Harold's favorite dishes: braised short ribs, steamed bok choy. While we ate, I mentioned casually that I'd received a bank statement addressed to Harold. Richard set down his chopsticks. Mom, that's just a computer glitch. I'll call the bank Monday. I watched Patricia's hand tighten around her wine glass. Her knuckles went white. Richard never called the bank. When I asked him about it the following Sunday, he changed the subject. 2 weeks later, Patricia came to my house alone. She brought a stack of papers and asked me to sign what she called routine estate paperwork. Mom, this is just cleanup paperwork, she said. The lawyer said it should have been done years ago. I read the first page carefully. It was a quitclaim deed. It would transfer my ownership of our family home, a 4-bedroom Craftsman valued at $585,000, directly to Richard. I asked for a pen. Then I said I'd left my reading glasses upstairs and needed a moment. Upstairs. My hands were trembling, but I photographed every single page with my phone. The notary line was already filled in. The same notary office from the fraudulent POA, the one that was shut down in 2017. This document had been prepared a long time ago. Then I heard Patricia on the phone downstairs. She was whispering. She's about to sign it. Just give me 10 more minutes. I came back downstairs and told Patricia I'd like Richard to explain the document to me in person. Her smile tightened. He's very busy, Mom. This really is just a formality. I placed the unsigned papers in a kitchen drawer and locked it with a small brass key I keep on a chain around my neck. Patricia left without the signed document. She didn't say goodbye. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the 19-page account history, the photographed deed, and a fresh red ledger. "Harold," I whispered, "I'm going to find every dollar." I wrote the date at the top of the first page, March 17th, 2024. By midnight, I had identified $214,000 in transfers I never authorized. I wrote a formal letter to the bank requesting certified copies of all accounts bearing Harold's name or social security number. I cited my rights as surviving spouse. The bank representative called me back 3 days later. Her voice sounded strange. "Mrs. Chen," she said, "you're listed as deceased on this account. Someone had filed a change of status form in 2016, marking me as deceased. That removed all my notification rights. The form was submitted by a person identifying themselves as R. Chen, son and executor. The corrected records arrived by mail. They showed 3 accounts. The original joint checking, a money market account opened in 2015, and a brokerage account opened in 2018. All 3 used Harold's social security number. All 3 had Patricia as sole signer. I didn't even know my husband had a brokerage account," I said to George when I showed him. "Because he didn't. Someone opened it after he was buried. The brokerage account held $167,000 in mutual funds, all funded by transfers from Harold's pension. His pension had been paying $2,800 per month. For 10 years, I never received a single payment." I sat down with my calculator. $2,800 times 120 months, $336,000. My husband worked 35 years for that money. It was mine. I wrote the figure in red ink and circled it 3 times. Then I found the pension redirect form. It was a forced beneficiary change, submitted to Harold's former employer. 3 weeks after his death, I called Richard. I kept my voice steady. I asked only about the pension. There was a long pause. "Dad wanted the pension to support the whole family, Mom," he said. "Patricia handles it. It's complicated." I recorded the call. George had helped me install an app for that. Oregon is a one-party consent state. In the background, I heard Patricia's voice. "Hang up. Don't tell her anything else." I started organizing everything. Red tabs for forged documents, blue for unauthorized transfers, green for recorded conversations, yellow for timeline problems. 31 years of balancing school budgets taught me one thing. The numbers never lie. But people always do. The binder grew to 47 pages in a week. Then I searched online for elder financial abuse attorneys. I found David Kwan. His website said, "I fight for the people families forget." Before I could even meet with David, Richard showed up at my door unannounced. Patricia was with him. He demanded I sign the quitclaim deed. He said the property taxes were overdue and the house could go to auction. "Mom, if you don't sign this by Friday, we could lose the house." "Is that what you want?" I had checked the county tax records online the day before. The property taxes were current through 2024, paid automatically from my personal savings. Patricia set a notary kit on my dining table. She brought a mobile notary who was waiting in the car. I told them I wasn't feeling well. I asked them to come back next week. Richard raised his voice. "For the first time in my memory, you're being difficult. Dad would be ashamed of how stubborn you're being." I gripped the edge of the kitchen counter. I felt the brass key press against my collarbone. In the hallway, Lily stood looking at the floor. She wouldn't meet my eyes. 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. It was from an attorney named Craig Hullis, representing Richard and Patricia. The letter said that as Harold's executor, Richard had authority to consolidate estate assets. It requested my cooperation. Then came the sentence that made my hands go cold. Failure to comply may necessitate a conservatorship petition to protect Mrs. Chen's interests. They were threatening to have me declared incompetent. I didn't cry. I photographed the letter and added it to the binder. Then Dr. Linda Pham called. Someone had requested my medical records, citing a family welfare concern. Dr. Pham had denied the request, but she wanted me to know. "Mei Ling, someone is building a case about your cognitive health. The request form listed Craig Hollis as the attorney. They weren't just taking my money. They were trying to take my freedom. That evening I called David Kwan. I told him everything. The conservatorship threat, the medical records, the quitclaim deed. His voice was firm. Mrs. Chen, this isn't a family disagreement anymore. This is elder financial abuse under ORS 124.100, and we're going to stop it. He filed a protective order the next morning. He scheduled an emergency meeting at the bank, and he told me something I'll never forget. Let them think they're winning. David took my case pro bono within 15 minutes of reviewing my binder. His mother lost her home to a predatory caregiver scheme in 2012. He understood. He flipped through the pages and said, Mrs. Chen, in 20 years of practice, I've never seen documentation this thorough from a client. You did my job before I got here. He flagged the forged POA, the false death status filing, and the pension redirect as 3 separate felonies. Then he told me there might be a 4th crime, but he needed the bank's internal records to prove it. David contacted Sandra, who directly. He requested a compliance audit under the bank's elder abuse protocols. Sandra was honest with him. Mr. Kwan, I've flagged this branch's handling of the Chen accounts internally. There were red flags we should have caught in 2015. She told him something else. The branch manager who approved Patricia's signer status in 2015, a man named Tom Everett, left the bank in 2019. He was now a licensed real estate agent, working for Jade River LLC, Patricia's company. David hired a forensic accountant named Rita Salazar. After 2 days of tracing every dollar, Rita called David. This isn't careless theft, she said. This is a structured siphon. Someone who understood how to move money slowly enough to avoid automated flags. Her flowchart showed the path. Harold's pension flowed into the money market account, then to the brokerage account, then to Jade River LLC, then into 2 rental properties in Clackamas County. Those properties generated $4,200 per month in rental income. All of it went to Patricia's personal account. David filed a formal complaint with the Oregon Department of Justice. Elder Abuse Prevention Unit. Case number E-2024-04418. It named Richard, Patricia, Craig Hollis, and Tom Everett. An investigator was assigned within 72 hours. David told me, from this point forward, every move they make is being watched. Then he said I needed to attend the bank meeting in person. Let Patricia's own paperwork tell the story. But first, I had to do the hardest thing of all. I had to pretend I was giving up. I called Richard. I made my voice sound tired, old, defeated. Richard, I'm 74 years old. I don't want to fight with my own family. Maybe you're right. Maybe I don't understand the finances. David was on mute on my other phone, listening to every word. Richard exhaled with relief. He said he'd bring the papers Saturday. Patricia emailed me a simplified summary of Harold's estate. It showed total assets of $43,000. She suggested I accept a one-time payment of $20,000 to settle everything. Her email said, Mom, this is more than fair given the estate's size. Harold would want us to handle this peacefully. I forwarded the email to David. He printed it. It was evidence of deliberate misrepresentation. The actual estate value, including the pension, the investments, and the rental properties, exceeded $780,000. They were offering me $20,000 for nearly $800,000 on Saturday. Richard and Patricia arrived with Craig Hollis and the quitclaim deed. I served tea and almond cookies. I smiled softly. Patricia placed the deed on the table. We've made this so simple, Mom. One signature and you never have to worry about any of this again. I picked up the pen. I held it over the signature line. Then I set it down. Gently. Before I sign, I said, I'd like to visit the bank one more time on Monday, just to understand Harold's accounts. Then I'll sign. Craig Hollis objected. He said there was no need to involve the bank. But Richard wanted to appear reasonable. Fine, Mom, Monday, but then we finish this. Patricia's jaw tightened. She glanced at Craig. He shook his head. None of them knew that David had already scheduled the Monday meeting with Sandra Hu and the compliance team. After they left, I stood at the kitchen window and watched their car pull away. And I cried. For the first time in months. Not from sadness, from the weight of pretending. I whispered to the empty kitchen. Harold, I kept my promise. I protected what you built. I opened the red ledger to the last page. I had written a single line. Monday, April 22nd, 2024. The truth. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. I wanted to walk along the Willamette one more time. Before everything changed. Monday morning, 9 a.m. David and I arrived at Columbia Pacific Bank. Sandra, who escorted us to a conference room. The branch director was already there. So was a compliance attorney and a representative from the Oregon DOJ Elder Abuse Unit. On the conference table was a stack of documents 3 inches thick, each section flagged with colored tabs. They matched my own binder system. Sandra looked at me. Mrs. Chen, we've completed our internal audit. What we found is significant. Then she said they also had security footage. Sandra presented the audit findings. The POA was never filed with the county clerk's office. The notary stamp came from a notary whose license had been suspended 4 months before the signing date. The compliance attorney spoke carefully. This power of attorney is legally void. Every transaction authorized under it is potentially fraudulent. The audit identified 87 individual transactions, $412,000, over 9 years, all unauthorized. The DOJ representative opened her laptop and said she had questions about Tom Everett. Agent Karen Marsh told us that Tom Everett had been cooperating with their office for 2 weeks. He admitted that Patricia offered him $15,000 to process the POA without standard verification. Mr. Everett has provided a signed statement, Agent Marsh said. He's willing to testify. His statement was 4 pages long. It included text messages between him and Patricia. One of them discussed how to keep the old lady off the account. Another text from Patricia read, she doesn't check anything. She trusts Richard completely. The room was very quiet when Agent Marsh read that one out loud. David presented my binder, the red ledger, the photographs, the recorded phone call, Patricia's email offering $20,000, the quitclaim deed, the fraudulent estate summary, the medical records request. My client spent 3 months building this case herself, David said, while her own family tried to have her declared incompetent. Agent Marsh photographed each page. She entered them into the DOJ's case system in real time. The branch director picked up the phone. He authorized an immediate freeze on all accounts connected to Patricia Chen Yang and Jade River LLC at 10:47 a.m. As we stood to leave, my phone rang. Richard. I let it go to voicemail. His message was panicked. Mom, the bank just called. They froze Patricia's accounts. What did you do? What the hell did you do? Agent Marsh asked for my permission to share the voicemail with the investigation team. His panic and his knowledge of Patricia's separate accounts were additional evidence. I nodded. You can have everything you need, I said, within 48 hours. The Oregon DOJ issued formal investigation notices to Richard, Patricia, and Craig Hollis. Patricia's accounts stayed frozen. The 2 rental properties in Clackamas County were placed under a judicial lien. David called me. They can't sell, transfer, or borrow against anything until this is resolved. The total frozen assets came to $623,000. Craig Hollis withdrew as their attorney, citing irreconcilable differences with clients. Patricia called me, sobbing. Mom, please. I made mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you. Think about Lily. Think about what this will do to her. I recorded the call. During the conversation, Patricia admitted she'd moved money around. She said Richard knew about most of it. I sent the recording to David within the hour. Richard showed up at my front door. He was unshaven, agitated. He demanded to talk. I spoke to him through the screen door. Richard, I loved you enough to give you every chance to tell me the truth. You chose not to. I held up the original beneficiary form Harold signed in 2013, the one that was stolen from my safe deposit box. David had obtained a certified replacement from Harold's employer. Richard stared at it. He said nothing. He turned and walked to his car without looking back. The Oregon State Bar opened an ethics investigation into Craig Hollis. Agent Marsh told David that Hollis knew the POA was fraudulent. His own billing records proved it. An invoice to Patricia from September 2016 included a line item: review and advisement regarding Chen POA validity. $475. He reviewed it. He knew it was void, and he used it anyway. Hollis faced potential disbarment. Late that night, my phone rang. It was Lily. Her voice was small, broken. "Grandma." I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about all of it. I just repeated what Mom told me to say. Lily is 24 years old, a nursing student at Oregon Health and Science University. She offered to come help me with anything I needed. I paused for a long time. Then I said, "Come Sunday. I'll make tea." 6 months later, the probate court issued its final ruling. All improperly transferred funds were to be returned to my sole control. $487,000. After legal fees and administrative costs. The judge said, the court finds clear and convincing evidence of financial exploitation of a vulnerable elder under ORS 124.100. The ruling was 23 pages long. I read it at my kitchen table with a cup of jasmine tea. I underlined passages with a red pen. Harold's pension was reinstated to my name. Back payments of $89,600 were deposited within 30 days. Patricia pleaded no contest to 1 count of elder financial abuse and 1 count of forgery. She received 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a restitution order. David told me, "It's not prison, but it's a record, and the restitution follows her for life." Richard was named as a co-conspirator, but avoided criminal charges by cooperating with the investigation. He agreed to a structured restitution plan of $1,200 per month. I did not speak to Richard at the hearing, but I left a sealed envelope on the courtroom bench where he had been sitting. I used part of the recovered funds to pay off the remaining mortgage on my home. $62,000. David helped me establish a trust that protects the property from future claims. "No one will ever take this house," I said. "Harold and I built this life together, and it stays in my name until I decide otherwise." The trust names Lily as the future beneficiary, contingent on her completing her nursing degree. I also opened a $25,000 education fund in Lily's name, at a different bank. Lily comes to Sunday tea every week now. She helps me plant new chrysanthemums along the front walk. She's learning to make Harold's favorite scallion pancakes. One Sunday, she was kneeling in the garden, her hands covered in soil, and she looked up at me. "Grandma, how did you stay so calm through all of it?" I handed her the copper watering can. "Because your grandfather taught me that patience is not weakness," I said. "It's preparation." Inside the sealed envelope I left for Richard was a single photograph. Harold, holding baby Richard at the hospital in 1972. On the back I had written, "I forgive you. I walk along the Willamette every morning again. My routine is restored." George Tanaka joins me twice a week now. We stop for coffee at a cafe near the Hawthorne Bridge. Last Tuesday he looked at me over his cup and said, "You know, Mei Ling, you're the toughest person on this river." I carry Harold's old pocket watch in my jacket. It stopped the day he died. I never replaced the battery. I just like the weight of it against my chest. I've started writing my story down in a new notebook. Not the red ledger. A blue one. For Lily. I didn't want to be right. I wanted to be wrong about everything. I wanted to believe my son was honest. I wanted to believe Patricia was family. I wanted the bank statement addressed to a dead man to be a computer glitch. But the numbers don't lie. And neither does silence. When you're really listening for the truth. I know some of you listening right now are going through something similar. Maybe a family member controls your finances. Maybe someone asked you to sign a document you didn't fully understand. Maybe you have a question you're afraid to ask. I want to tell you something. If something feels wrong, It probably is. And you are never too old to fight for what's yours. If you need help, call the National Elder Fraud Hotline. 1-833-FRAUD. 11. I've gotten letters from other women who heard my story and started asking their own questions. That means more to me than any court ruling. The most powerful thing I had wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a courtroom. It was a red ledger, a phone camera, and the discipline to write everything down. They expected tears. I gave them receipts. I'm sitting at this kitchen table right now. The same table where Patricia placed the quitclaim deed. The same table where Lily sits on Sundays. The jasmine tea is still warm. And I have one final question for you. If someone in your own family, someone you loved, someone you trusted, was slowly taking everything your partner had built for you, what would you do? Would you stay silent? Or would you open the red ledger? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe if this story moved you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, patience is not weakness. It's preparation.